Ah, hello, friend.
We aren't friends, but hello.
Well, actually, I was wondering how you were getting along with that list. You know, we were discussing options for electric family cars. Well, I think I'm going to need some space pretty soon.
Oh, it's funny you should say that, because I actually think I've got the perfect car here for you and your growing brood. Look, it's that. Nikki? Okay, she may have a small point, because whenever anybody mentions the passenger version of a Citroen Berlingo, or anything that's more commonly found as a commercial, I just imagine a van with windows. Not stylish, not designed, just extra glazing. Anyway, I'll get to the point. And that is the point. It's the new Citroen e-Berlingo.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and let us know what you think in the comments about this new e-Berlingo. Is it still too awkward, or is it fantastic? You tell us.
So, the new Citroen e-Berlingo is a very practical, pure electric MPV that, it has to be said, still looks fairly vanish. Just for reference, this is essentially the same car as a Peugeot e-Rifter or a Vauxhall Combo E, except with a bit of plastic surgery. I prefer this Citroen version by a small margin, and it comes in two flavours, either 5 or 7 seats, which are called the M or the XL. This being the XL version, which has the 7 seats, a massive back end and tons of storage, which I'll get to in a minute. Underneath is a 45 kilowatt hour battery, which should give it 173 miles on the standard test, which will probably be quite a lot less in the real world. And this XL version weighs in at £30,495 after the government's £1,500 plug-in car grant, which makes it very cheap for 7 seats. That sounds suspiciously like a good deal, but what we're here to ask is it any good? So it's still largely just a van with extra glazing, but I do think that Citroen has tried at least mildly hard to make this car look like it's got a bit more of a lifestyle rather than just doing deliveries all the time. It certainly, from the front, looks more in keeping with the rest of Citroen's new car range. This, by the way, is a daylight running light, and this is the headlight underneath it. It's got a blanked off grille, little blue E badges. It's also got little flashes of colour around the fog light area. It's also got what Citroen call these air bumps on the sides, which add a bit of texture, again with a little flash of colour. It just makes it slightly less vanish. By the way, any other colour apart from white is a £495 option, and you cannot get alloy wheels on the XL version. You get these steel wheels with wheel trims, and I actually think I'd just prefer the steel wheels. I'd just take those wheel trims off. It's still very rectangular. Don't get me wrong, but it does look a tiny bit more purposeful now, especially from the front. The only thing is, the 5-seat M version, rather than this XL, looks a lot more funky. This is the practical one. Now, this is where the e-Berlingo was always going to shine, because it was built to be voluminous. Really obvious stuff. Well, it's got sliding doors, both sides, which is really handy if you're getting in and out in a really tight car parking space, or you're loading kids in child seats and all of that. And these outer two are Isofix, by the way, although I have noticed that these rear windows don't open. They sort of open like a flap, a little bit like that. They don't roll down, so that's not ideal. This XL version comes with the 7 seats, so it's got 2 chairs in the far back, which are quite small but actually pretty spacious. I've got plenty of knee room, and you're sat quite high, so you can see over the heads of everybody else in the car. The good thing about these, though, is they can be removed. So I'm going, if I can get out. And all of this will give you a proper load bay. In this XL version, you can load up to 3 metre long items. Now, I don't own anything 3 metres long, but the idea is there.
One problem with the rear seats, though, is that if you have a full car and 3 people in the middle row, the third person's seatbelt actually cuts across the rear passenger's vision. It's not in their face, but it is in their eye line.
So in here it is fine. I mean, it is not the last word in plush luxury, but you do get a quite modest 8-inch touchscreen here. You've got physical aircon controls. It's all a bit kind of Playmobil, if you know what I mean. Quite chunky graphics, looks very simple. They've tried to liven it up in here with some flashes of, I'm not sure what colour that is, I think it's teal, because there is a lot of black plastic. And actually it does feel a little bit like a normal car that's had a petrol or diesel engine and then had an electric drivetrain kind of stuffed up underneath it. I've not had a car in a long time that's actually got blanked off switches. I find that quite interesting. Saying that, you do get a load of driver assistance systems, everything from self-park to cameras to anti-collision, all these different things. Now, things I do get excited about, don't judge me, are storage, and the Berlingo is actually quite good at that. So you get things like these things over here, which are cup holders, by the way. You get this glove box, which is actually quite deep, goes all the way back there. You get a cubby here, but you can feel sort of sharp edges in things, which isn't great. Then there's a hole here. I have no idea what that's for, unless you drink a lot of espresso. There's a big deep shelf here, which is good for your mobile phone. Now, in some of the posher versions, that's got a wireless charging pad for your phone in it, but this one hasn't. There's another little cubby here. There is nothing in between the seats, which is good if you want to put a bag down there, but I could have done with maybe some sort of storage box. And then either side, you've got deep door pockets with extra little cubbies down the side. And then up here in the roof, you've got a kind of, I don't know, it's just a big sort of storage slot, I think. But weirdly, it's got little holes in it. So I can't work out what that's for. It's also got a key. How quaint.
The e-Berlingo comes with a 45 kilowatt-hour usable battery that would see 173 miles of range if you lived in the same mythical land as wherever they do the standard WLTP tests. But in the real world, you're probably looking at 120. I've been getting just 97 in this really cold weather, which is really quite poor. That's only okay if you're likely to be dodging about doing stuff and moving people. What is good news is that the car comes with 100 kilowatt charging, so you'll see 10 to 80% in under half an hour on a bigger 100 kilowatt rapid charger or above, and that should see you set up with about 80 miles of range. 11 kilowatt charging capability is optional, and that would cost £300 in the UK, though unless you've got access to 3-phase power, it's probably not a box worth ticking. And yes, it could have a bigger battery and more range, but that might make it more expensive and then not eligible for the UK government grant of £1,500 for cars under 32,000.
You knew there was probably going to be a fly in the ointment when it came to the driving, and you'd be right, because driving the new Citroen e-Berlingo is decidedly on the practical side. And that's probably not going to sound like a compliment, because it isn't. It's got just 134 brake horsepower, which is enough, and front-wheel drive, and that kind of does the job. It's not fast, and it's not exciting, but it does get the car down the road. There are, however, 3 modes: power, normal, and eco. Now, to be honest, there's no point in the power setting. Eco is only really there if you really want to get the last bit of charge out of your battery. So I've just been leaving it in normal. It's not hugely efficient, which is to be expected because it's basically a barn door. It does have regenerative braking, a very mild regenerative braking. It's not like changing down in a manual car, it's more like someone was breathing on your brakes. You can't drive it as a one-pedal vehicle, which is slightly annoying because I always feel slightly more holy when I'm using really strong regen. It feels like you're clawing as much energy back to put into the battery as you can. This really doesn't do much at all. I'm coming up to a corner now, I'm going to lift off. That is full regen, and I've still got to use the normal brakes. So no, this isn't a one-pedal drive car. What I would say though is that Citroen makes quite a big deal about having comfort-orientated suspension, and the e-Berlingo actually does ride really quite nicely. It's also pretty quiet for what is essentially a van. Usually you get the noise echoing around in here, and it would be quite noisy, but this is quite calm and quite soothing, really. It's certainly a vehicle that you could do distance in. Unfortunately, I've only been getting 97 miles of range out of this battery, and it is really cold, so it's 0 degrees, but under 100 miles of range means you've got to want to do stuff that's actually quite close to your house. Otherwise, this is not going to be that practical. The thing is, because it's comfortable and it's quiet, ish for this kind of car. That's kind of what you want, isn't it? It doesn't need loads of power. It doesn't need to be able to go around a corner at 90 miles an hour. You're not going to be doing laps of a racetrack with snowboards and 6 children in the back. So that's fairly well judged. I don't really mind it. I mean, I would like more aggressive regen. I would like steering that feels like it's connected to the front wheels. It is a bit light. I just feel like this is pretty much what you expect. It's okay, but it's definitely no more than that.
Honestly, if you've got kids and hobbies and kit though, this e-Berlingo could make some sort of sense. If sexy was practical, then I would be getting all flustered. But it isn't, and I'm not.
Just over 30 grand for a Citroen Berlingo is still not particularly cheap, but get it through work or on a decent lease and the costs over 3 years might surprise you. But the fact remains that this e-Berlingo in particular just feels like a van with windows. The range could be a lot better and the driving experience is decidedly neutral, and I can't help but think that unless you've got a really bulky hobby that isn't more than 40 miles from your house, this is a bit niche.
But what do you think? Please let us know in the comments. And if you need to know anything else about the e-Berlingo or any of its competitors like the Vauxhall Combo E Life or the Peugeot e-Rifter, then please do log on to electrifying.com and we'll help you find some answers.